The humidity lay over Theriot like a wet blanket, turning the August morning into something you had to push through rather than walk through. Bear Broussard sat at the counter of Mama Lede's cafe, his coffee going cold in front of him, watching the ceiling fan turn lazy circles that did nothing for the heat. He'd been writing since dawn, putting miles between himself and the empty house in Lafayette that still smelled like his ex-wife's perfume and the daughter who'd stopped returning his calls 3 years ago. The road was easier than the silence. It always had been. Mama Lede's was the kind of place that existed in every small town along the bayou. Vinyl booths patched with duct tape, a jukebox that only played Cajun waltzes, and coffee strong enough to strip paint. Bear had been coming here for 30 years, back when his badge still meant something, and he still believed the system could protect the ones who needed protecting. He'd left that badge in his saddlebag. Couldn't throw it away. Couldn't wear it either. The bell over the door chimed, and a woman walked in with a little girl trailing behind her. The woman was maybe 30, thin in a way that spoke of skipped meals rather than choice, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that was starting to come loose. She moved with the careful economy of someone who'd learned to take up as little space as possible. But it was the girl who caught Bear's attention. She was 7, maybe 8, with the same dark hair as her mother and eyes that were too old for her face. She walked 3 steps behind, close enough to grab her mother's hand if she needed to, far enough to disappear if someone looked too hard. Bear recognized that walk. He'd seen it 100 times in his years with Child Protective Services, in living rooms and emergency rooms and courthouses where children learned to become ghosts. The woman, Mama Lidit called her, ordered 2 sweet teas to go and stood by the register, counting out change with fingers that trembled slightly. The little girl drifted toward the window, pressing her nose against the glass to watch the boats on the bayou. Bear went back to his coffee. Not his business, not anymore. But he couldn't stop watching. The girl, Lily, her mother called her, had a purple ribbon in her hair, the kind grandmothers gave and granddaughters treasured. She traced patterns on the foggy window with one finger, drawing what looked like a house with a pointed roof and a door she colored in by rubbing her fingertip back and forth. "Lily, come on. We need to get back." The girl turned at her mother's voice and her sleeve rode up. Bear set down his coffee. The bruises were finger-shaped, 4 distinct marks wrapped around her upper arm, like someone had grabbed her hard enough to leave a signature. They were yellow at the edges, green in the middle, a week old, maybe more. Healing, but not healed. Lily saw him looking. For a moment, their eyes met, and Bear saw something in her face that he'd seen too many times before, the careful calculation of a child deciding whether an adult could be trusted. She pulled her sleeve down and walked to her mother. Bear should have let them go, should have finished his coffee, paid his tab, gotten back on his bike, and ridden until the memory faded into all the other memories he carried. That was the deal he'd made with himself when he'd turned in his resignation. No more cases, no more kids, no more watching the system fail and being powerless to stop it. But his legs carried him to the door before his mind could object. "Ma'am." He caught them in the parking lot, keeping his distance, his hands visible. The woman flinched at his voice, stepped in front of her daughter with the automatic protection of prey sensing a predator. "I'm sorry to bother you. He stopped, started again. "I used to work for CPS a long time ago, and I noticed we're fine." Maya's voice was flat, rehearsed. "Thank you for your concern. I'm not asking if you're fine. I'm asking if she is." Maya's eyes flicked to her daughter, then back to Bear. Something moved behind them. Fear, desperation, the particular anguish of a mother who knows she's failing and can't figure out how to stop. "She fell," Maya said. "At school. Kids fall. School's out for summer." The silence stretched between them. Lily stood behind her mother, one hand gripping the fabric of Maya's dress, the other touching the purple ribbon in her hair like a talisman. "I need to go," Maya said. "Derek's waiting." "Derek." Bear filed the name away. "Your husband?" "Boyfriend. He's good to us. He works hard. She stopped, shook her head. "I need to go." She took Lily's hand and walked toward a rusted Civic parked at the edge of the lot. Bear watched them go, his hands curling into fists at his sides. He should let it go, should climb on his bike and ride and forget. But Lily looked back, just once, just for a second. She looked over her shoulder at the stranger who'd noticed what no one else had noticed, and in that look, Bear saw something that broke through every wall he'd built in the 3 years since he'd stopped carrying a badge. She saw him seeing her, and she wanted him to keep looking. Bear walked back into the cafe. Mama Ladea was wiping down the counter, her eyes sharp beneath the gray curls that framed her face. That woman who just left. My, what do you know about her? Mama Ladea's hand slowed on the counter. Why you asking? Because her daughter has bruises on her arm that didn't come from falling. The silence that followed was heavy with things unsaid. Mama Ladette set down her rag and leaned against the counter, her voice dropping low. Mai Chen came here about a year ago from Houston, her and the little one. Running from a bad marriage, I heard. Got a job cleaning houses, found a place out on Bayou Road. She paused. Met Derek Thibodeau about 8 months back. Moved in with him 2 months or later. Thibodeau. Bear knew the name. Everyone in Terrebonne Parish knew the Thibodeau family, sprawling, connected, with cousins in the sheriff's department and uncles on the parish council. Which one? Gary's youngest, the one who works at the body shop. Mama Ladette's eyes were careful. He's got a temper, Bear. Everyone knows it. But he's also got family that looks out for him. Has anyone reported anything? School? Doctor? Anyone? School year just ended, and people around here... She shook her head. People mind their own business, especially when the Thibodeau name is involved. Bear pulled out his wallet, left a 20 on the counter for a $2 coffee. That little girl looked at me, Mama. Looked at me like she was waiting for someone to see her. I know. Mama Lede's voice was soft. I've seen it too, but I'm an old woman who runs a cafe. What am I supposed to do? You're supposed to call me if you see them again. Bear pulled a card from his wallet. Not his old CPS card, but a newer one, plain white with just his name and number. Day or night, you see that little girl, you call me. And then what? Bear didn't have an answer. He'd spent 15 years with CPS, 15 years believing that the system worked, that the right report to the right person would save the right child. Then he'd watched a 6-year-old named Marcus die in a hospital bed because the system had failed him, and Bear had quit the next day. He couldn't save them all. He knew that now, but maybe he could save one. He walked out into the August heat, climbed on his bike, and sat there for a long moment, staring at the road that led away from Theriot and the one that led deeper in. His phone buzzed, a text from his daughter, Celine, the first in 6 months. Dad, we need to talk. Call me when you can. He looked at the message, looked at the road, looked at the cafe where a little girl had shown him her bruises without saying a word. Then he started the engine and turned toward Bayou Road. Celine could wait. She'd been waiting for 3 years. A few more hours wouldn't change anything. But that little girl's eyes, those might change everything. The house on Bayou Road sat at the end of a gravel drive, shaded by cypress trees that blocked whatever breeze might have come off the water. Bear parked his bike a 1/4 mile up the road, behind an abandoned shrimp boat that had been rotting there since Katrina, and watched. He watched for 3 hours, saw the rusted Civic pull in around noon, saw Mai and Lily get out, Lily clutching a paper bag from the cafe, saw a man emerge from the house, thick-shouldered, mid-30s, moving with the loose-limbed confidence of someone who'd never had to answer for anything in his life. Derek Thibodeau. Bear had looked him up on the ride over. 2 arrests for assault, both dropped. 1 DUI that got pleaded down to a traffic violation. A restraining order from an ex-girlfriend that had expired 3 years ago. The kind of record that told a story the courts refused to read. He watched Derek take the paper bag from Lily's hands, watched the girl flinch at the contact, watched Mai step between them with a smile that was pure performance. They went inside. The door closed. The cypress trees swayed in a breeze that didn't reach the ground. Bear sat in the heat and remembered all the cases he'd worked, all the doors he'd knocked on, all the children he'd tried to save. Some of them had made it. Most of them hadn't. And Marcus had trusted him, had believed him when Bear said everything would be okay, and 3 weeks later, Marcus was dead, because a judge had decided that a father's rights mattered more than a child's life. He couldn't go through that again, couldn't make promises he couldn't keep, couldn't look into another child's eyes and tell her the system would protect her when he knew the system was broken, but he couldn't right away either. His phone buzzed again. Celine, Dad, please, it's important. He typed back, "Tonight, I promise." Then he put the phone away and kept watching. At 4 o'clock, a truck pulled into the driveway, a lifted Silverado with mud on the tires and a Thibodeau auto body decal on the door. 2 men got out, both carrying cases of beer. They went inside, and a few minutes later, Bear heard music through the open windows. Country, turned up loud enough to cover other sounds. At 5:30, Mai came out alone. She walked to the end of the driveway, stood there for a moment, looking at nothing, then walked back inside. Her shoulders were shaking. At 6, Lily appeared at a window on the second floor. She pressed her palm against the glass, looking out at the bayou, at the cypress trees, at the road where Bear sat invisible in the shadow of the abandoned boat. She couldn't see him. He knew that. But he raised his hand anyway, a small wave, a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. The girl dropped out of sight. The window stayed empty. Bear started his bike and rode back to town. The Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Office sat on Main Street in Houma, a squat brick building with flags out front and a parking lot full of cruisers. Bear had friends here once, people who'd worked cases with him, who'd trusted his judgment, who'd gone to bat for kids when the system tried to look the other way. Most of them were gone now, retired, transferred, burned out. The ones who remained had learned to keep their heads down. Deputy Teresa Guidry was an exception. She met him in the parking lot, 2 coffees in hand, her uniform crisp despite the heat. She'd worked with Bear on a dozen cases before he quit, had cried at Marcus's funeral, had called him every month for a year afterward until he stopped answering. "I didn't expect to hear from you," she said, handing him a cup. "Thought you'd ridden off into the sunset." "Sunset keeps moving." Bear took the coffee. "I need information on Derek Thibodeau." Teresa's expression tightened. "Why?" "Because he's hurting a little girl, and nobody's doing anything about it." The silence that followed was familiar. Bear had heard it 100 times, the pause before someone decided whether to help or look away. "Derek's got protection," Teresa said finally. "His uncle is parish council president. His cousin is a sergeant in this office. Every complaint that's ever been filed against him has disappeared before it reached a desk." "There have been complaints?" 3 that I know of. 2 from the ex-girlfriend, 1 from a neighbor at his old apartment. She took a sip of her coffee. "All withdrawn or unfounded. The system works the way it's designed to work, Bear, just not for everyone. The girl's name is Lily. She's 7, maybe 8. She has bruises on her arm that look like fingerprints. Have you filed a report?" "Would it matter if I did?" Teresa looked away. When she spoke again, her voice was low. "I can't help you officially. I can't open an investigation, can't send anyone to the house, can't do anything that would show up on paper. If I try, I'll be reassigned to traffic duty by the end of the week." "Then help me unofficially." "How?" Bear finished his coffee, crushed the cup in his fist. "I need to know who else has seen what's happening. Teachers, doctors, neighbors, anyone who might be willing to talk. And I need to know if Mai has any family, anyone who might take her in if she decides to leave." "And if she doesn't decide to leave?" "Then I need to give her a reason to." Teresa studied him for a long moment. "You know this isn't how it works. You can't just, 'I know exactly how it works. That's why I quit.'" Bear met her eyes. "That little girl looked at me today, Reese. Looked at me like I was the first person who'd ever seen her. I can't unsee that. I won't." Teresa pulled out her phone, scrolled through her contacts. "There's a social worker in New Orleans, Marguerite Fontenot. She runs a domestic violence shelter, handles cases the system won't touch. She's not official, but she's effective." She texted him the number. "And Mai's got a sister in Baton Rouge, married, 2 kids, hasn't talked to Mai since she moved in with Derek. Name's Anna Nguyen." "How do you know that?" "Because I've been watching too." Teresa's voice was heavy. "I just haven't been brave enough to do anything about it." Bear pocketed his phone. "Start being brave." He rode back to Theriot as the sun set over the bayou, painting the water in shades of orange and gold. His phone buzzed twice more. Celine, asking if he was okay, asking when he'd call, and twice more he ignored it. At 8 o'clock, he parked outside Mama Leday's and went inside. The dinner crowd was thin, just a few locals nursing beers and watching the Saints' preseason game on the TV above the bar. Mama Ledate saw him come in and nodded toward the back booth. Mai was there, alone, a cup of coffee untouched in front of her. Her eyes were red, her hands were shaking. She told me you came by, Mama Ledate whispered as Bear passed. Showed up an hour ago, asked if she could wait for you, said you were the only person who'd ever looked at her daughter like she mattered. Bear slid into the booth across from Mai. She didn't look up. He's getting worse, she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. When I met him, he was sweet, patient, said he understood what I'd been through, said he'd never hurt us. A tear slid down her cheek. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. What changed? He lost his job at the body shop. His uncle got him another one, but it's less money, and he... She stopped, wiped her eyes. He drinks more now, gets angry about things that don't matter. The way Lily looks at him, the way I don't smile enough, the way the house isn't clean enough. She finally looked up, and Bear saw the desperation in her eyes. I tried to leave once, 3 months ago. Got as far as the bus station in Huma before his cousin brought us back. His cousin, the deputy? Mai nodded. Derek said if I tried again, he'd make sure I never saw Lily again. Said his family knows judges, lawyers, everyone. Said they'd take her from me and I'd never get her back. Bear thought about Marcus, about all the children the system had failed, all the parents who'd believed the threats because the threats were real. He can't take her if you're not here, Bear said quietly. I know people who can help you disappear. Disappear where? I have nothing, no money, no family who'll talk to me, no... You have a sister in Baton Rouge, Anna. Mai went still. How do you know about Anna? Because I've spent the last 8 hours learning everything I can about your situation. Bear leaned forward. Your sister hasn't stopped looking for you, Mai. She's called the sheriff's office 3 times in the past 6 months, asking if anyone had heard from you. Derek's been intercepting your mail, your phone calls, everything. She thinks you don't want to talk to her. The tears came faster now. Mai pressed her hands against her face, her shoulders shaking. I can get you out, Bear said. You and Lily both. But you have to trust me. Why? The word came out broken. Why do you care? You don't even know us. Bear thought about the answer, about Marcus, about Celine, about all the years he'd spent trying to save children while his own daughter grew up without him. Because your daughter looked at me today, he said, and I made her a promise without saying a word. I don't break promises, not anymore. Mai was quiet for a long time. Then she reached across the table and took Bear's hand. Tomorrow, she said. He's got a job in Lafayette. Won't be back until late. Can you? I'll be here at dawn. Bear squeezed her hand. Pack light. Only what matters. He stood to go, but Mai's voice stopped him. That promise you made her, what was it? Bear looked at her, this woman who'd survived so much and still had so far to go. That someone was finally paying attention. He walked out into the Louisiana night, the heat pressing against him like a living thing. His phone buzzed. Celine again. Dad, I really need to talk to you, please. This time he called her back. Dad? Her voice was thick, like she'd been crying. I've been trying to reach you all day. I know. I'm sorry. What's wrong? A long pause. Then, I'm pregnant, and I'm scared, and I didn't know who else to call. Bear closed his eyes, leaned against his bike, felt the weight of everything he'd been running from settle back onto his shoulders. I'm coming, he said. As soon as I can. There's something I have to finish first, but then I'm coming. Promise? He thought about Lily, about Mai, about all the promises he'd made and broken over the years. I promise, he said. This time I mean it. He ended the call and looked up at the stars scattered across the bayou sky. Tomorrow he'd get Mai and Lily out. Tomorrow he'd start making things right. And then he'd go find his daughter and finally be the father she deserved. The road stretched ahead of him, dark and uncertain, but for the first time in 3 years, Bear knew exactly where he was going. Bear didn't sleep that night. He sat on the porch of the motel outside Huma, watching the highway and making calls. Marguerite Fontenot answered on the 3rd ring, her voice sharp despite the late hour. Who is this? My name's Bear Broussard. Teresa Guidry gave me your number. I've got a woman and a child who need to disappear by tomorrow afternoon. A pause. Then, tell me everything. He told her. Mai, Lily, Derek, the Thibodeau family connections, the bruises, the threats, the cousin who'd dragged Mai back from the bus station. When he finished, the line was quiet for a long moment. I can have a safe house ready in New Orleans by noon, Marguerite said. But getting them there is on you. My people can't operate in Terrebonne Parish, not with the family you're talking about. We'd be burned before we crossed the county line. I'll handle transport. What about after? After, we relocate them. New identities if necessary. Connect them with the sister in Baton Rouge once things cool down. She paused. This isn't going to be easy, Mr. Broussard. Men like Derek don't let go. They follow, they threaten, they make phone calls to friends in law enforcement. You sure you're ready for that? Bear thought about Marcus, about the night he'd held that boy's hand in the hospital, promising that everything would be okay, and the morning he'd had to call the parents and tell them their son was gone. I've been ready my whole life, he said. I just forgot for a while. His next call was to the North Country Riders chapter in New Orleans, brothers he'd ridden with before the badge, before CPS, before everything fell apart. The president, a man named Remy, who'd done 2 tours in Iraq and never talked about either of them, listened without interruption. How many you need? Just a few, enough to make sure we get from Theriot to New Orleans without being followed. You'll have 6. They'll be in Huma by 8. Remy paused. This girl, how old? 7, maybe 8. I've got a daughter that age. His voice hardened. We'll be there at 7. The last call was the hardest. Dad? Celine's voice was groggy with sleep. It's 3 in the morning. I know. I'm sorry. I just needed to hear your voice. Are you okay? Bear looked at the highway, the headlights passing like ghosts in the dark. I'm doing something tomorrow, something that matters, and when it's done, I'm coming to see you. Dad, I know I've been gone. I know I've missed everything. Your graduation, your birthdays, all of it. And I can't fix that, but I can be there now. He swallowed hard. You're going to be a mother, Celine, and I'm going to be a grandfather, and I don't want to miss any more. The silence on the line was fragile, full of years of hurt and hope. Okay, Celine said finally. Okay, Dad, just be careful, whatever you're doing. I will. He ended the call and watched the sun rise over the bayou, painting the water in shades of pink and gold. By 7, Remy and 5 riders had arrived at the motel. They didn't ask questions, didn't need explanations. They just checked their bikes, tested their radios, and waited. By 7:30, Bear was on the road to Theriot. The house on Bayou Road looked different in the morning light, smaller somehow, less menacing. The rusted Civic was in the driveway. Derek's truck was gone. Bear parked at the end of the gravel drive and walked to the front door. Mai opened it before he could knock, Lily standing behind her with a backpack clutched to her chest. He left an hour ago, Mai said. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. I packed what I could, clothes, documents, the money I've been hiding. How much money? $300. It's all I could save without him noticing. It's enough. Bear looked past her to Lily. The girl was watching him with those 2 old eyes, the purple ribbon still in her hair. Hey, Lily, you remember me? She nodded slowly. We're going to take a trip today, you and your mom, somewhere safe. He knelt so he was at her level. Is that okay with you? Lily looked at her mother, then back at Bear. Is he coming? No, he's never coming near you again. The girl's face did something complicated, relief and fear and hope all tangled together. Then she reached out and took Bear's hand. Okay, she said. It was the first word she'd spoken to him. They were loading the Civic when Mai's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her face went white. It's him, she whispered. It's Derek. Bear took the phone from her hand. Don't answer. Let it go to voicemail. The phone rang 4 times, then stopped. A moment later, a text appeared. Job canceled. Coming home early. Don't go anywhere. Mai's legs buckled. Bear caught her before she hit the ground. He knows, she gasped. Someone told him, his cousin, or... She was hyperventilating, her whole body shaking. He's going to kill me. He said if I ever tried to leave again... Mai. Bear's voice was firm. Look at me. She looked. How long until he gets here? The job was in Lafayette. An hour, maybe less. Then we have an hour. Bear pulled out his phone, hit the radio app connected to the other riders. Remy, change of plans. I need you at the house on Bayou Road, now. The response was immediate. 10 minutes. Bear turned to Mai. We're not taking the Civic. It's the first thing he'll look for. We're going to leave it here, make it look like you never left. Then we're riding out on bikes, back roads, nothing he can track. I can't. Lily can't ride a motorcycle. She's 7 years old. She'll ride with me. You'll ride with Remy. We'll be in New Orleans before Derek even figures out you're gone. Mai shook her head, tears streaming down her face. This won't work. He has people everywhere. His cousin will put out an alert, and every deputy in the parish will be looking for us. Let them look. Bear took her hands, held them steady. I spent 15 years in a system that failed people like you. I know how it works. I know where the gaps are, and I know how to disappear. Why should I trust you? Bear thought about the answer, thought about Marcus, about Celine, about all the promises he'd made and broken. Because I'm not the system, he said. I'm just a man who saw your daughter's bruises and decided that was enough, that she was enough. He squeezed her hands. You're enough too, Mai. You're worth saving. The sound of engines cut through the morning air. Remy and the others rolling up the gravel drive, 6 bikes in formation, chrome gleaming in the August sun. Mai looked at them, looked at Bear, looked at Lily, still clutching her backpack, still wearing the purple ribbon. Mama? Lily's voice was small. Can we go now? Mai wiped her eyes, straightened her spine, and in that moment Bear saw the woman she'd been before Derek, before Houston, before everything that had beaten her down. Yes, baby, she said. We're going now. They moved fast. Bear put Lily on his bike, showed her where to hold on, made sure her arms were wrapped tight around his waist. Remy took Mai on his, positioning her sideways so she could hold the backpack. The other riders spread out, 2 in front, 2 behind, 2 flanking. Route 24 to 90, then straight into New Orleans, Remy said over the radio. Anybody follows, we split and regroup at the safe house. Everybody clear? 5 voices confirmed. Bear looked back at the house on Bayou Road one last time. Then he kicked his engine to life. Hold on tight, he told Lily. She did. The convoy pulled out, gravel crunching under their tires, and turned toward the highway. Behind them, the rusted Civic sat in the driveway, empty and waiting. Somewhere on the road from Lafayette, Derek Thibodeau was driving toward a house that would be silent when he arrived. And on the back roads of Terrebonne Parish, a little girl with a purple ribbon pressed her face against a stranger's leather jacket and felt, for the first time in months, like she was finally moving toward something instead of running from it. The engines roared. The bayou fell away behind them. And Bear Broussard kept his eyes on the road ahead, one hand on the throttle, the other pressed over Lily's small fingers to make sure she didn't let go. They were 20 miles outside Theriot when Bear's phone buzzed against his chest. He ignored it, kept his speed steady, his eyes on the road, his hand over Lily's. The phone buzzed again and again. At the next straightaway, he pulled it out and glanced at the screen. 3 texts from Teresa Guidry. Derek's at the house. He's losing his mind. His cousin just called in an APB. Says Mai kidnapped the girl. Be careful. He's coming for you. Bear put the phone away and keyed his radio. Remy, we've got a problem. I heard. Remy's voice was calm, the way it always was when things got dangerous. Deputy Cruiser just passed us heading the other direction. Didn't stop, but he slowed down. They'll be setting up roadblocks on 90. We need another route. Already on it. There's a back road through Chauvin, comes out near Montagut, adds 30 minutes, but it's empty this time of day. Do it. The convoy shifted, peeling off the highway onto a narrow road that wound through sugarcane fields and abandoned fishing camps. Lily's arms tightened around Bear's waist, but she didn't make a sound. She'd learned a long time ago that silence was safer than questions. They were 10 miles from Montagut when the truck appeared in Bear's mirror. A lifted Silverado, mud on the tires, closing fast. No lights, no siren. This wasn't official. This was personal. Remy. I see him. Bear checked his speed, checked the road ahead. The Silverado was gaining, maybe a quarter mile back now. At this rate, it would catch them before they hit the next town. Take Mai and keep going, Bear said. I'll handle Derek. Bear, that's not a request. He slowed his bike, let the others pull ahead. Get them to New Orleans. I'll meet you there. Remy's response was silence. Then, you've got 2 hours. After that, I'm coming back for you. Understood. The convoy pulled away, engines fading into the distance. Bear pulled to the side of the road and killed his engine. Lily was still holding on. Mr. Bear? Her voice was small against his back. Why are we stopping? I need you to do something for me, Lily. He kept his voice gentle, the way he'd learned to talk to frightened children all those years ago. I need you to get off the bike and walk into that sugarcane over there. Walk until you can't see the road anymore, then sit down and wait. Can you do that? But Mama, Your mama's safe. She's with my friends, and they're going to take her somewhere no one can hurt her. He turned so he could see her face. I need you to hide for a little while, okay? Just until I come get you. Lily looked at him with those two old eyes. Is he coming? Derek? Yes. Are you going to stop him? Bear thought about Marcus, about all the children he'd failed to protect, all the promises he'd made and broken, about Celine, waiting for him somewhere on the other side of this road. Yes, he said, I'm going to stop him. Lily reached up and untied the purple ribbon from her hair. She pressed it into Bear's palm, her fingers trembling. My grandma gave this to me, she said. Before she died, she said it would keep me safe. She closed his hand around the ribbon. You can borrow it. Bear looked at the ribbon, faded, worn thin from years of handling, a child's talisman against a world that had given her nothing but reasons to be afraid. Thank you, Lily. I'll give it back, I promise. She climbed off the bike and walked into the sugar cane without looking back. Within seconds, she was invisible, swallowed by the green. Bear tied the ribbon around his wrist and waited. The Silverado came around the curve, doing 60, brakes screaming as Derek spotted the lone bike on the shoulder. It skidded to a stop 20 feet away, and Derek Thibodeau came out of the cab like a man possessed. He was bigger than Bear had expected, 6'2", maybe 6'3", with the thick shoulders of someone who'd done manual labor his whole life. His face was red with rage, his fists already clenched. Where are they? He was screaming before his boots hit the gravel. Where's my family? Bear stayed on his bike, his hands visible on the handlebars. They're not your family, Derek. They never were. My's my woman. That girl's under my roof. Derek was closing the distance, his whole body vibrating with fury. You got no right to take what's mine. Lily isn't yours. She's a child, and you've been hurting her. Something flickered in Derek's eyes, not guilt, not shame, but the particular defensiveness of a man who'd never been held accountable for anything in his life. I never touched her. She falls. Kids fall. Kids don't get finger-shaped bruises from falling. Bear's voice was steady. I've worked 100 cases like this, Derek. I know what abuse looks like. I know how men like you operate. The control, the isolation, the threats. I've seen it all. You don't know anything about me. I know you lost your job at the body shop. I know your uncle had to bail you out, and it ate you up inside. I know you take out your failures on people who can't fight back because that's the only way you feel like a man. Bear paused. And I know your cousin is probably on his way here right now, thinking he's going to save you. But he's not, because this ends today. Derek's face twisted. He reached into his truck and came out with a tire iron, the metal glinting in the August sun. You think you're some kind of hero? Think you're going to ride in and save the day? He was advancing now, the tire iron raised. My family owns this parish. You're nothing. You're nobody. Bear didn't move. I'm the man who's going to make sure you never hurt that little girl again. He kept his eyes on Derek's, watching for the moment the rage would tip into action. You can swing that iron if you want. Maybe you'll even hit me. But there are 6 witnesses who saw you terrorize Mai and Lily. There's a deputy in Huma who's been documenting your abuse for months. And there's a domestic violence shelter in New Orleans that's going to make sure Mai and her daughter disappear so deep you'll never find them. You're bluffing. Try me. Derek hesitated. The tire iron wavered, and in that moment of hesitation, Bear saw something he hadn't expected. Fear. Not of Bear, not of the consequences, but of something deeper. The fear of a man who'd built his whole identity on control and was watching it slip away. She needs me, Derek said. His voice had changed, the rage giving way to something almost plaintive. Mai needs me. She can't survive on her own. She survived before she met you. She'll survive after. I love her. You don't hurt people you love. The tire iron dropped to Derek's side. His shoulders sagged. For a moment, he looked less like a monster and more like what he was, a small man who'd made himself feel big by making others feel small. Bear heard the sirens before he saw them. 2 cruisers coming fast from the direction of Huma. Teresa Guidry in the lead, her lights blazing. Derek heard them too. His face went through something complicated. Calculation, desperation, the dawning realization that his family's protection only extended so far. I didn't mean to hurt her, he said. His voice was barely a whisper. The girl. I get so angry and I can't." He stopped, looked at the tire iron in his hand like he didn't recognize it. "Something's wrong with me." "Yes." Bear's voice was quiet but firm. "Something is, and you need help. But you're not going to get it by terrorizing women and children." The cruisers pulled up. Teresa got out, her hand on her weapon, her eyes taking in the scene. Bear on his bike, Derek standing in the road with a tire iron, the empty sugarcane fields stretching out on either side. "Derek Thibodeau." Her voice carried across the distance. "Drop the weapon and put your hands on your head." Derek looked at Bear, looked at Teresa, looked at the sugarcane where a little girl was hiding with her grandmother's ribbon. Then he dropped the tire iron and put his hands up. Teresa cuffed him while her partner read him his rights. Assault with a deadly weapon, menacing, violation of a protective order that Marguerite Fontenot had somehow gotten filed in the 2 hours since Mai had left Theriot. The Thibodeau family connections might delay things, might complicate things, but there were too many witnesses now, too many records, too many people paying attention. The system was broken. Bear knew that better than anyone. But sometimes, if you pushed hard enough, you could make it work anyway. "The girl," Teresa said quietly, once Derek was in the back of the cruiser. "Where is she?" Bear walked into the sugar cane. He found Lily exactly where he'd left her, sitting with her knees pulled to her chest, her eyes closed, her lips moving in what might have been a prayer. "Lily!" Her eyes opened. She saw Bear, saw the purple ribbon still tied around his wrist, and her face did something he hadn't seen before. She smiled. "You stopped him," she said. "I stopped him." Bear knelt in front of her, untied the ribbon, and held it out. "And now I'm going to take you to your mama. She's waiting for you in New Orleans, in a place where no one will ever hurt you again." Lily took the ribbon, tied it back in her hair with fingers that had stopped trembling. "Mr. Bear?" "Yeah? Thank you for seeing me." Bear thought about Marcus, about all the children he hadn't been able to save, about Celine, who'd needed a father and gotten a ghost instead. He couldn't change the past, but he could change what came next. "Come on," he said, offering his hand. "Let's go find your mom." Lily took his hand, and they walked out of the sugarcane together. The convoy reached New Orleans at noon. Marguerite Fontenot met them at the Safe House, a nondescript building in the Garden District, hidden behind iron gates and century-old oak trees. Mai was waiting on the porch, her face drawn with worry that melted into tears when she saw Lily climb off Bear's bike. Mother and daughter ran to each other. Bear watched them hold on like the world was ending and beginning at the same time. "Thank you." Mai's voice was muffled against Lily's hair. "Thank you. I don't know how to—" "You don't have to thank me." Bear's voice was rough. "Just take care of her. That's all that matters." He turned to go, but Lily's voice stopped him. "Mr. Bear?" He looked back. The little girl with the purple ribbon was watching him with those two old eyes that had somehow, in the space of a morning, started to look like a child's again. "Are you going to see your daughter now?" Bear thought about Celine, about the grandchild he'd never met, about all the roads that had led him here, to this moment, to this choice. "Yeah," he said, "I'm going to see my daughter." "Good." Lily smiled again, that unexpected, radiant smile that made everything worth it. "You should keep your promises." Bear looked at the ribbon in her hair, at the mother holding her tight, at the safe house that would shelter them until they could start over. "I will," he said. "From now on, I will." He mounted his bike and rode north toward Baton Rouge, toward Celine, toward the life he'd been running from for 3 years. Behind him, the city of New Orleans glittered in the august heat. Ahead of him, everything he'd been afraid to want. 7 months later, Bear Broussard sat at the counter of Mama Leday's cafe with a cup of coffee going cold in front of him. Some things never changed, but other things did. The bell over the door chimed, and Celine walked in, one hand resting on the swell of her belly, the other holding the hand of a woman Bear had only met twice, but already loved like a daughter-in-law. They slid into the booth by the window, the same booth where Mai had sat on that August night, her hands shaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dad." Celine kissed his cheek as she passed. "You're early." "Old habit." He picked up his coffee, found it cold, set it down again. "How's my granddaughter?" Active. Celine smiled, rubbing her belly. The doctor says 2 more weeks, maybe less. 2 weeks. Bear had been counting the days since Celine had let him back into her life. Cautiously at first, then more openly as the months passed, and he kept showing up, kept calling, kept being there in all the ways he hadn't been for the 3 years he'd spent running from his own grief. He'd moved to Baton Rouge in September, rented a small apartment 10 minutes from Celine's house. He'd gotten a part-time job consulting for a nonprofit that helped domestic violence survivors navigate the legal system. Marguerite Fontenot's organization, expanded now with funding from a grant Bear had helped write. The work was hard, the hours long, the victories rare, but every child he helped felt like a small repayment on a debt he'd been carrying since Marcus. The system was still broken. He knew that, but he'd stopped using that as an excuse to walk away. "You hear from Mai?" Celine asked, stirring her tea. She knew the whole story now. Bear had told her everything that first night in Baton Rouge, sitting on her porch while she cried, and he apologized, and they both tried to figure out how to be family again. "Got a letter last week." Bear pulled out his phone, showed her the photo Mai had sent. A small house in a suburb outside Portland, Oregon, far from Louisiana, far from the Thibodeau family, far from everything that had tried to destroy her. Mai stood on the front porch with Lily beside her, both of them smiling. Lily was taller now, her dark hair longer, the purple ribbon tied in a bow at the end of a braid. "She looks happy," Celine said. "She is." Bear pocketed the phone. Anna helped them get settled. Mai's got a job at a daycare center, and Lily started 3rd grade in January. Straight A's so far. And the ex-boyfriend? 18 months in parish jail. His family's lawyers got the charges reduced, but they couldn't make them disappear. Too many witnesses, too much documentation. Bear paused. Teresa says he's been attending anger management. Court-ordered, but still. Maybe something will stick. He didn't believe it. Not really. Men like Derek rarely changed. But the point wasn't Derek. The point was Mai and Lily, safe and free and building a life that didn't include bruises hidden under long sleeves. Mama Lede appeared with fresh coffee, her gray curls a little grayer than they'd been 7 months. "Ego," her eyes a little softer when she looked at Bear. "Refill share." "Please." He watched her pour, the steam rising between them. "Thank you, Mama. For everything." "For what? Making coffee?" She waved a hand. "You did the hard part. I just kept my eyes open." "Sometimes that's enough." Bear thought about Lily, standing at that window on the first day, tracing a house on the foggy glass, about the moment she'd turned and her sleeve had ridden up and he'd seen what no one else had been willing to see. "Sometimes that's everything." Mama Lede patted his hand and moved on to other customers. Bear watched her go, then turned back to his daughter. "I need to tell you something," he said. Celine's face went careful, the same expression she'd worn for 3 years, waiting for him to disappoint her again. "What?" "I'm proud of you." The words came out rough, unpracticed. "I know I haven't said it enough. Haven't said it at all, maybe. But watching you build this life, the house, the marriage, this baby—" He stopped, started again. "You did that without me, and I'm sorry I wasn't there. But I'm proud of the woman you became anyway." Celine's eyes filled with tears. Her partner reached over and took her hand, and Bear saw the small gesture for what it was, a family supporting each other the way families were supposed to. "I'm proud of you too, Dad." Celine's voice was thick. "For coming back, for trying. I know it's not easy." "It's easier than running." Bear picked up his coffee, hot this time, and took a sip. "I spent 3 years running from everything that hurt. Turns out the hurt comes with you anyway. Might as well stand still and face it." They talked for another hour, about the baby, about names, about the nursery Celine was decorating in shades of yellow and green, about Bear's work with the nonprofit, about Teresa Guidry's promotion to detective, about the changes slowly rippling through Terrebonne Parish as more people started paying attention to what happened behind closed doors. When they finally stood to leave, Celine pulled something from her purse. "Lily sent this," she said. "For you. It came with Mai's letter." It was a drawing done in crayon on construction paper, a big man on a motorcycle, a little girl with a purple ribbon, and a road stretching out ahead of them into a sunrise. At the bottom, in careful 3rd grade handwriting, "Thank you for keeping your promise. Love, Lily." Bear looked at the drawing for a long time, Then he folded it carefully and put it in his wallet, next to the photo of Celine at her high school graduation, the one he'd missed, the one he'd been carrying for 3 years as a reminder of everything he'd failed to be. Now it would be a reminder of something else. "Dad." Celine was watching him. "You okay?" "Yeah." He tucked the wallet away. "I'm okay." They walked out into the March afternoon, the Louisiana winter finally breaking into something that felt like spring. Celine's car was parked next to Bear's bike, the same bike he'd been riding when he'd first seen Lily's Bruises, when he'd decided that some things were worth stopping for. 2 weeks, Celine said, hugging him goodbye. "You'll be there?" "I'll be there." He held her tight, feeling the baby kick against his chest. "I'm not running anymore, Celine. Not from you. Not from anything." She pulled back, studied his face the way she used to when she was small, trying to figure out if he was telling the truth. "I believe you," she said finally. "This time, I really do." She got in her car and drove away, her partner waving from the passenger seat. Bear watched them go until they disappeared around the curve, then turned back to his bike. The road stretched ahead of him, north to Baton Rouge, to his apartment, to the life he was still learning how to live. The sun was warm on his face, the coffee sat settled in his stomach. And somewhere in Oregon, a little girl with a purple ribbon was doing her homework at a kitchen table, safe and whole and unafraid. Bear mounted his bike and kicked the engine to life. He thought about Lily's drawing, about the road stretching into the sunrise, about all the promises he'd made and broken, and the one he'd finally kept. Then he pulled onto the highway and rode toward home. The wind carried the smell of the bayou, cypress and salt and something green beginning to grow. Spring was coming. Bear Broussard was finally ready for it. If this story moved you, subscribe so you never miss one. And tell us in the comments, who saw you when no one else was looking?